Yes.
So he crops up.
Does 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2? Is that good? Can you mute me? 1 2 1 2.
Thank you all for supporting our work. Each and every one of you that support have adopted an 18th century printing process, fundraising, digitise that work. One of my colleagues, Llywelyn Hall Adam will explain a bit more about that actually in the Q&A. So the RAIN is a collaboration between two fantastic artists, the Society of Antiquaries. Start again. No, the RAIN event is a collaboration between two fantastic artists, the Society of Antiquaries of London, London Art Week, and URS Linley. Now, these two artists became affiliate members of the Society last year, and they fertiled around in our collections as affiliates can do, and they discovered quite strange and significant things that they decided they would like to make an exhibition out of. And also, they would like to create artworks which they could auction, and the proceeds from the auction will go to supporting digitizing our 18th and 19th century prints and drawings. Now, these are a phenomenal record. We've got some 25,000 records of sketches, watercolors, pencil drawings, prints of antiquities, topography, archaeological sites all the way across the country. I live in Shrewsbury in Shropshire, and I was fertling around in the Shrewsbury box, and I found a watercolor by an architect, a young architect called Thomas Telford. And if you look out there, you'll see a young artist called William Blake, who's apprenticed to the Society and did many drawings for us. So with London Art Week, the two fantastic artists, URS Linley, we are going to mount this exhibition, which runs from the 28th of June until the 5th of July. And the idea behind it is to celebrate 150 years of the Society being at Burlington House. But we've also got another reason to celebrate, because between planning the exhibition and today, we have agreed with our landlord, the government, to sign a lease for 999 years, which means we can stay in this premises and continue our work. And I can't overestimate the crisis we were in before because we didn't know if we would be evicted. We couldn't afford to pay the rent, and we could have become the Society of Antiquaries of Wolverhampton. So anyway, we are here to stay, and what better way than the RAIN to explore our collections and share these collections with as wide as audience as possible. So this is really what the exhibition's all about. So I would now like to introduce you to our guest speakers, and I'll go one by one in alphabetical order. I just need to put my glasses on. So we have Adam Dant, is a Jerwood Drawing Prize-winning artist. He was appointed by Parliament as the official artist of the 2015 general election. He has produced commissioned work for Queen Elizabeth II's Jubilee, Christie's 250th anniversary, the Christopher Wren Tercentenary, and the 900th anniversary of St. Bartholomew's. His work has been seen all over the world, including New York's Museum of Modern Art, the V&A, the Tate, and next door at the RA. Next is Dan Llywelyn Hall. He's a landscape and portrait painter who's exhibited throughout the UK, including the National Portrait Gallery. He was commissioned to paint an official portrait of Queen Elizabeth II with a sitting at Windsor. In 2015, he was artist in residence at the Cannes Film Festival. And for the 75th anniversary of the Dam Busters raid, he painted 133 portraits of the men who participated. And our very, very special guest who's come to ask these guys the questions, I'm delighted to welcome Cerys Matthews, MBE, musician, author, and broadcaster. Cerys was founder member of the multi-million selling band Catatonia, and her show for BBC Radio, Cerys on 6, is the most downloaded music show in the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm, warm welcome for our artists, Adam Dant, Dan Llywelyn Hall, and Cerys Matthews.
Thank you. Thank you, Dominic. Thanks for that lovely introduction. What's the matter with Wolverhampton? No, seriously, it's such a pleasure to be here today. I got invited to come along to the Society of Antiquaries, and who would say no to be welcomed in and invited to scurry into the main room there, only open to fellows, I hear. It was absolutely brilliant, and I wish you well with the digitization and the new leasehold as well. Congratulations. So to begin at the beginning, I'd like you to take us along from the beginning of this whole project for you. What happened? Did they just call you out of the blue?
Well, I make a map every year for London Art Week, and the exhibition that Dan and I are putting on is part of London Art Week, which brings together a lot of galleries in Mayfair and St. James's, and they hosted an event here. Dan and I came along, had some nice gin and tonics, and were given the tour of the library and just thought, how come we've walked past this place countless times on our way to the Royal Academy, like most visitors to the Royal Academy, never set foot through the door. When we did set foot through the door, it was an eye-opener.
And Dan, did you have the idea? Whose idea was this to respond, to go in, to be allowed access, to scurry around and respond to it?
Yeah, well, I think whenever you respond to a collection, you have to kind of find the some sort of common thread. And it seemed to me that maybe slightly selfishly, that sort of the royal connection and something to explore, particularly with the paintings in this wonderful collection here, which got my attention straight away. And Adam, he's got his obvious connections to Richard III's funeral, which he attended and painted, and as you say, he's done these. So it just seemed a natural kind of connection to look at the theme of royalty and rule, if you like, going back as far as we could find out, starting with the collection. So in Adam's case, it was more to do with sort of manuscripts and books, maps.
Dan, your career is aligned with the monarchy quite tightly. Did you foresee this when you were a youngster growing up in Barry-Bados? That's South Wales, if you don't know Barry.
No, I sort of little bit, it'd be strange to say it, but I did have a little bit of a kind of feeling I might end up doing the painting of said queen some time ago. But yeah, when you get the letter, it kind of changes your sense of responsibility, I suppose. But not deliberately. I mean, I'm just curious because I find it's a fixation, fascination in Britain. We are constantly trying to kind of reevaluate what they mean. All the wonderful stories going back. Every moment in history is defined and sort of overarched by monarchy, particularly in the British Isles. And then in Adam's case, which I think you'll hear next, he went even further back. I mean, he went to the origins of the Isles itself.
How far back did you go, Adam?
I went back to Chaos.
Nice.
The progenitor of Gaia,
Yeah.
the mother of the Titans,
Tell us
who
more.
in essence is, if you take the British monarchy back, that's where you end up, which is what you see in this drawing here.
Yes.
It's the origin myths of the British monarchy. And I've been doing some work with the next Lord Mayor of London. My studio's in the City of London, so I'm very much embedded in the kind of deep history of the City of London. And Dominic mentioned I'd done this job for St. Bartholomew's Hospital last year, who are 900 years old. Christopher Wren died 300 years ago. So, digging deep into the history of the City of London is part of my work. And so Geoffrey of Monmouth and, the Historia Britannicum, I was familiar with.
Yeah.
So when
Tell us more about Geoffrey of Monmouth before we move on.
Geoffrey of Monmouth was he's kind of proto-historian who filled the gap in the history of Britain from the 12th century back to, you imagine who were the first people on this land. Could be described as a load of old nonsense. I think most of the antiquaries would say, yeah, it's questionable.
Because in today's world, we get so much disinformation and misinformation.
People
How it compares with the past as well.
I think it's harder to argue that Brutus of Troy didn't exist than to argue that he did exist.
Yeah.
So, like religion, you have to disprove it because it's been part of the the beating heart of British, mythic history for generations.
Both your work. Is this mic making a horrible noise for everybody? Can I do something about it? Can I just hold it? Is that better? Yes, it's better for me as well. Sorry about that. So your works, I admire both of your works. There is a sense of mischief, subterfuge, or
Well, to say that Prince Harry is a descendant of Zeus takes some kind of is a little bit subversive, isn't it?
did you collaborate closely, or did you just come into these rooms and then go into your favorite little corners separately and then chuckle?
Well, Dominic mentioned the importance of digitizing the collection as an online resource. That's crucial. I used the online searchable resource of the Society's archives a lot. You never know what you're going to find.
What was the strangest thing you found?
Strangest things, that's a difficult one. I think the strangest thing in the collection is the most famous thing, which is it's called the Royal Chronicle of Henry VI, which was made as a gift to the king to show how his lineage goes back to Adam and Eve. Now I think that's strange, but then the quest for legitimacy, we all have it in our own lives, and then we have it as a nation, I think, because it's arguably gives a framework in which the rule of law can exist, the social contract can exist, and we can tell stories.
Dan, tell us about the enjoyment you had when you were looking at these characters from history and how they tend to change over the generations, in a sense.
Yeah, it's a bit like opening Pandora's box, really, because you start looking at one image and then you go down various rabbit holes. Kind of, if you're lucky, you find some other information or images which kind of pique curiosity. But you can get utterly lost in it. And what for me is a bit of a fixation, an ongoing theme, particularly in portraiture, is that there are so many of these distant figures, particularly in this period, coming from the medieval period, where we don't have any, we have very few scant sort of representations visually of these people. Particularly in Wales, nothing. I mean, barely, really almost literally nothing. I mean, I can pick about, less than one handful worth of images.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think it's to do with the fact that around this period of time, the monarchy sort of began employing craftsmen, largely from overseas, who would come over, and they were kind of regarded as artisans in the same way as which we look at now, furniture makers.
Like the Dutch artists.
The Dutch artists, yeah, and a lot of them would have been. But they were really, the function was so different from what we now look at them as. We're looking at them purely as pictorial representations, but they were, they were dating cards. They were kind of, to send over to monarchs overseas and say, do you fancy me?
Really?
Oh yeah. They were bigged up. I mean, Holbein was.
Is that King Henry there?
It is, yeah. It's the young King Henry, yeah. So they would certainly have been taken with the ambassadors overseas to kind of, match and say, do you like this person? And so often they were wrong, famously with Henry VIII's court with Holbein,
Yeah.
And he was really the first one to kind of really do it at a very high level, but he managed to keep his head. So, yeah.
In terms of sort of propaganda that you can kind of scratch away at, did you find a lot of that in the collection?
I think the job of an antiquary is to interpret the past from objects. It's very empiricist. So propaganda is subject to the rigorous academic readings of the antiquary, whereas as two artists we can play extremely fast and loose with all this stuff.
I love that, fast and loose. And we're going to go and see what the new, fresh response to these brilliant old things are.
So rather, if I found an object in the collection that related to one of the drawings I'm making, I would use it as a prop in a fantasy, rather than trying to interpret the past from it like an antiquary. So
yeah, let's talk.
That's Brutus of Troy there. That's him as an engraving, as if he had his own coinage. And one of the objects I became interested in the City of London was called the London Stone. No one knows where it came from. Like the Mayor of London, Lord Mayor of London, is supposed to strike it with his sword to declare himself Lord Mayor. And
Does it exist?
yeah, it's in a Sports Direct on Cannon Street for a while.
The righteous place
I
for
think
it.
the building was bought by a Japanese bank who've lovingly restored it. But the myth, according to Geoffrey of Monmouth, is that it's the, you know what a palladium is?
No.
It's an object that protects a country from invasion. So Bruce of Troy brought the palladium from Troy with him. It could have come from Troy, or it could be this this plinth that Diana, who told him in prophecy in his dream that he was going to found Britain. It could be that plinth, but it's in Cannon Street now.
And you can visit it.
You can visit it, and you can venerate it, and you can offer libations to Diana. But I was looking for similar objects in the Society's collection and found these drawings of plinths from Roman Scotland, from the borders of Scotland, some of which are to the goddess Diana.
Okay.
So for me, like I said, they're props in a drama rather than objects for the study of the antiquary.
Take us through some more there, Adam.
So it's a chronology. So we go from Gaia, as I said, through to Zeus. And Aeneas, in the Aeneid, he was the grandson of Ascanius, who fled from the burning ruins of Troy. And his grandson was Brutus of Troy, who was banished from Italy after he accidentally shot his father. And then he landed on this island in the Tyrrhenian Sea, offered libations to Diana, who was his goddess. She told him, go north and you'll find an island, and this will be your new Troy. Yeah. So after he killed all the giants who were living in Albion, he found himself in a place that resembled Troy topographically, and that's where we are now. The hills of London correspond to the hills of Troy.
What are your dreams like, Adam?
I tell you what, have you heard of a horse called City of Troy? It won the Derby yesterday. So that was quite a good coincidence.
Take us through another one.
This is the story of Bran the Blessed, whose head became a palladium.
I was just going to say, yeah.
What's he called in Welsh? He's got a different...
Bendigeidfran.
That's him, yeah.
Yeah, very famous character from the Mabinogion.
Yes, but the Mabinogion is like a counter-narrative to Geoffrey of Monmouth's retelling of the history of Britain.
Because it's absolutely 100% true, isn't it, the
Mabinogion? So his head, disembodied head, told his men, he was killed by the king of Ireland.
And his
who was
head could talk, even though it was cut off.
He said, bury my head at Tower Hill, or it's called the White Hill in London, and it will forever serve as a palladium against the invasion of the Saxons until King Arthur dug it up, saying this is a load of superstitious nonsense. This is the man who listened to Merlin. And then consequently we're invaded.
Adam, you're not telling me that Bendigeidfran's head is in this society?
I don't know what King Arthur did with it. I don't know whether he was an antiquary, I suspect not. But a lot of the work they do here, does tie in with the Stonehenge, for example, and societies which we don't know about.
And King Arthur
Welsh. King Arthur Welsh.
Sorry, we're not going to go there, but I can see that. Right, go back to the dragon. Bran
the Blessed, there were 3 palladiums. There's some dragons buried somewhere near Oxford, and there were some bones of someone else that are buried at the main ports of Britain. All of them were lost in the 3 plagues. It's a long story, but in this drawing, a lot of the story of the ravens in the Tower of London came from Charles I being told the story of Bran the Blessed's head. And he said, we need something like that now. Why don't we? And his symbol was the raven. So he said, we'll just get, is it 6 ravens and 1 for luck? Who are still at the Tower of London. So it's the same myth that we live with today, that London will fall if these birds disappear. So
how many hours have you spent in this society, Adam?
You
let him out.
I was kind of enmeshed in the stories already.
Yeah.
But and then I'd try and find connections, convenient objects that I could use visually in recreating these. I mean, they're not really illustrating the stories. They're like a compendium of objects that help to tell the story. So, for example, the bird at the top that represents the raven comes from just a random piece of stained glass that the collection have here.
Can I ask a personal question? When you were a child, did you always have the urge to respond to information and history?
I was quite a difficult child, I think. Yeah. I was quite solitary. I think you find with lots of solitary children, they go down these kind of avenues of fantasy, and books were a big part of my childhood. 'Cause,
It must have been incredible for you to go and have access to these books and these illustrations.
oh, no, it's a treat. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. And
Take-
an artist, we seek inspiration in, multifarious places, but
Yeah.
if it's all there in one place,
Yeah.
it's inexhaustible. Like you say, why leave?
But take us through
So,
some more then.
So the two other guardians of the City of London who still exist, and you can see them in November when we have the Lord Mayor's parade through the streets, are Gog and Magog, who are in the Bible, they're in the Quran, under various guises. But they were, in the story that Geoffrey Monmouth tells, it was one giant called Gog Magog. And there's a place outside of Cambridge where I grew up called the Gog Magog Hills, where this giant was supposed to have lived.
Yeah.
So,
Gog is a North Walian, where I'm from.
yeah.
Sorry, just I
And it's-
digress again. Go
I'm
on.
sorry about it, but a constant Welsh connection.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
But I think you look after your myths in Wales better than we do in England.
We believe them too,
Yeah,
just like
so
you, Adam.
really believe in the little people and all that.
Yes, yes.
So Gog Magog will appear as two giant, well, a couple of old ladies made these huge wicker giants, and you'll be able to see them carried by 8 people through the streets. And they guard the Guild Hall, and they were kept by Bruce of Troy as guardians of the city. So they appear here, and if you can go and see them at St. Dunstan in the West Church on Fleet Street, where they ring the bells.
These pieces of art will be up for auction
Yes.
to raise money for the digitization here.
Yeah.
How big are they? Are they real size that we're seeing on the
They're
screen?
A1, so they're good. They're a fair size. Suit any domestic environment.
And where will where will people be able to see them?
So we're going to have an exhibition opening on the 28th here for a week.
Yeah.
And it's going to be open access to the Society's meeting room to see the works.
Yeah.
And then we have a gala auction on the 4th of July.
And
There's
there
something
are
else happening the
programs
same
as
night.
well that you could, are they in the programs that people can
Oh, yeah,
take home?
they're all in the catalogue here, which
Okay.
Dan has lovingly put together.
Okay.
But
You've
so,
got many more.
so
Tell us
there's
more.
there's a few more, but and then above it you have the 33 daughters of Diocletian who refused to marry their intended spouses, murdered them, got sent off in a boat, landed in Albion, and they bred with the monsters who lived here and created this race of giants. But
Okay.
it's all about taking the stories back to their true and original source.
What part of Albion? Do we
Just
know?
in general,
Okay,
Albion,
okay,
yeah,
okay, okay.
north, south, all over the shop. And there they are in one of the little books. There was a book produced for children to educate them as to, proper British history.
So that they're
So,
aware of
yeah,
giants.
Aware of giants. So that's in the collection here. And closer to our own age is King Lud, who's like pre-Roman. And him and his 2 sons were responsible for building the walls around the City of London that would have informed the Romans where to build their walls. And you can see them in the same church in St. Dunstan's as well.
Do you know,
There they are.
about, oh, yeah.
They haven't survived, they've kind of suffered over the years. But they were part of what was called Ludgate,
Yeah.
which stood at the junction of Farringdon Road and Fleet Street, and was the entrance to London and its most holy site, which is where St. Paul's Cathedral is now, which is here. And this is another, this diptych here is one of the treasures of the collection of the Society. It's John Gipkin's, it was his plea to, I don't know if I've got the name right, his plea to the king to do something about the poor state of the medieval cathedral. So he commissioned this beautiful diptych
Yeah.
with the angels saying prayers for the church. And I've kind of recreated this within the plan of Christopher Wren's cathedral. And then, of course, underneath St. Paul's is the Temple of Diana, which would have been Bruce of Troy's place of worship.
So layer upon layer.
Layer upon layer. I think it's very exciting when Christopher Wren examined the ruins of the burnt cathedral after the Great Fire. He didn't find the Temple of Diana, but he kind of knew it was down there somewhere.
He did a prayer.
He did a prayer, yeah. But I've got one more, this one, which is the, this is closer to where my domain is. This is the blind beggar of Bethnal Green. And they have another little children's book about this character who was blinded at the Battle of Evesham. His father was Simon de Montfort. And so they were rebel barons and they were hunted by King Edward. And so as part of his escape plan, he pretended to be a beggar. And he married a kind of, well, what he thought was a low-born woman in Bethnal Green. And they had a daughter and they used to hang around the streets begging. So they would evade capture. But their house is currently the Blind Beggar pub of
Oh my gosh.
yes, of Cray Twin mythology. And so I found this little device in the collection, which is a seal stone of someone called Dagamba. It's like a crayfish. So they're appearing in the picture there.
What elements of this do you enjoy the most? Is it the sort of exaggeration of truth? Is it the playing with memory?
I know I drive my family nuts when I'm walking through London. Said, see that stone over there? Do you know what that is? Do you know where that comes from? Because I've lived in London 35 years, but the longer you live here, the more you realise the little you know about it.
Yeah.
Just
Very
you know,
Socrates,
hooks
isn't
where
it?
policemen used to hang up their coats in the 1930s. I like the details.
You mentioned City of London we have tonight a few times, and it was just this week that somebody said to me that it could have been raised and made into a grid system. Is that
Yes.
right?
After the Great Fire, yeah, there were several plans, one of which ended the guy in prison. As, the king said, why would he capitalise on these poor Londoners? I mean, Christopher Wren produced his plan for a grid 7 days after the fire.
Mm.
But within that time, people have already gone back there and said,
And claimed land.
yeah, that was my Lalandi. I buried my cheese there. You can't take that bit. So it would never work. So that's why we still have, in parts of the City of London, the medieval higgledy-piggledy system.
How many works have you formed for this range?
So I've made 10 drawings, 8 of which are going to be part of the online auction. And those are all the stories from Bruce of Troy to the Blind Beggar, Bethnal Green. And then there are 2 more. One is this, which I brought the original in. This is the chronology of the British monarchy. And I'm currently making a drawing about the history of the society itself, which is also full of mystery, because they were formed in a maybe one pub, maybe another pub in the Strand.
Tell us more.
Well, it's the Old Devil Tavern. I think the antiquaries would meet there, because I think as people, when you see an old man digging in a field, you get suspicious. And I think that was the opinion of the
Body
antiquaries.
snatchers.
Yeah. In the 18th century, Gilray and other cartoonists took the mickey out of antiquaries by caricaturing and poking old mummies and digging in fields. So I think they have a better reputation now than they used to.
I think we quite like antiquaries, people that work in antiquaries, don't we?
Well, like you pointed out, you create a rabbit hole when you come into this place. And
Yeah,
I'm sure some people have.
Adam, do you have any more to show us just
I
now?
think I've got one more. Blind Beggar. Oh yeah, and this is a map of Roman London. But the idea behind this is the
London.
sorry, Roman Britain. This is a kind of proto Boudica type figure, and I have the beavers here because the beaver is really because you think so we're descended from Romans, and then before that, Britons would have been the ancient Britons and the Picts and all those tribes. But before that, the beavers would have been the first architects, the first urban planners of the British Isles, because they created the ideal situation for a conurbation to a. So I mentioned when people walked over from mainland Europe over Doggerland, they would have thought that this is good. It's got a nice pond and it's all dammed up that end so we can keep the fish.
So you don't have to have royal blood. You just have to have reigned over the land as part of
It's a bit of a suspicious concept, I think, but I think it's more about a comfortable life than anything else. People want to. I mean, my family, they have not left the Fens since like 1400. My daughter's the first Dant to be born outside of the Fens in 600 years. I said, why? What? Why didn't you have any ambition? But they were comfortable there. They've got good soil.
Yeah.
They go skating in the winter.
Yeah.
They want for nothing. They've never been conquered except for the Romans. So I thought I think it's about comfort and quality of life.
How excited are you to present this fresh new work?
I think when I'm going to have all my drawings on easels in a line here, and hopefully people will be able to get the story from the pictures visually. I mean, I've written captions to go with them, just in case.
Well, I wish you well with it, and
Thank
it's so
you,
lovely
Cerys.
to listen to you and
Thank
to
you.
meet you finally. Dan, Mr. Adam Dant.
Oh, yeah.
Have you got any more? Oh, that's the shield.
Oh, that's the shield, yeah, that's Boudica's shield. Well, it's not. It's a shield that's.
Is that here?
That's here, yes. It's part of the collection.
Where is it, Dominic? Can you bring it down? Can we play with it? It's lovely to know. Is it, I mean, is it authentic? Is it part of the myths of this society, or is it, can we say it's authentic? So, but we think it's Boudica's? No. Oh, sorry, I'm just, there's so much information going on.
Don't listen to the artist.
So I'm going to introduce Dan Llywelyn Hall now. And my first question, Dan, to you is, like, listen to the effervescence and the passion and the knowledge of this gentleman next to you. How closely did you collaborate together in these rooms? Did you fizz together?
Well, we didn't compare notes, but we frequently, whenever we meet up, we seem to be getting back to the same sort of subjects in terms of our interests or areas of read or research. It just so happens that we go off in very different sort of tangents visually. But
Compare how your approach differs.
well, I think as you see, Adam's is far more, perhaps more rigorous than mine. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, he's very much interested in the symbols. I think the symbols particularly for him important. The sense of place that is very critical to him, I think. Whereas me, I sort of I like to surf the verge of kind of emotional stuff, but then also with a tinge of kind of history or a sort of evaluation of something which has been or about to happen. So by framing it in these aged-looking sort of garbs, they kind of, for me, they're almost in a disguise kit. I quite like the fact that they kind of, I took a very deliberate decision to paint them in the correct outfits of the age, because I like the timelessness of them. I mean, when I was confronted with these paintings, I felt straight away that they spoke to me as freshly, I suppose, as they would have done on the day they've been painted.
Talk me through your thoughts when you first look on, say, one of these paintings here, as an artist that's going to respond to it.
Well, let's look at that. I mean, the one on the screen, for example, is Athelstan. So it's this painting here. So the one, the first, shall we say, the first English king, technically speaking, I suppose. This is depiction. I don't know when it was painted. I mean, it was medieval, but it was taken from a house extracted from the sort of the furnishings. So it was kind of a mural painted into the wall or something. Yeah. And the person who commissioned this obviously felt very strongly about it, and felt that all these years later he wanted an image of it. Now, firstly, why is that? Why would hundreds and hundreds of years later somebody commission a picture of a Anglo-Saxon king? Where would he have got the images? These sorts of questions came to my mind. Where is his points of reference? Yeah. Have we lost these points of reference particularly? That's another thing which grabs my attention. These days, where do we go to find out what he may or may have looked like? Are there any descriptions? So I sort of went off on those tangents, really, on the kind of slightly more slight, scant bits of information I had. My response in some cases was very directly referring to the painting. So here, Athelstan is looking away. He's kind of got his, he's all dressed up, ready to roll. And I thought, well, what if I turn this into why he thought he deserved to be the king? And what was his motive? What was his right? And I had researched a bit about him, and he had this sort of obsession with St. Cuthbert, and he went to visit the cross, which he's holding there, the orb cross, which gave him the sense of divine right, and he believed that by visiting this and spending time in front of this what would have been a relic of some kind, he felt that he was then justified to go on and become the ruler of England. So.
And he managed?
Well, he did indeed, quite successfully.
We need an orb. We all need an orb.
Yeah. So then visually, what do you then do with that? Well, then I thought, well, I'm gonna stick Cuthbert in there somewhere as this kind of slightly ethereal figure, dreamlike, and then have him directed out to the audience. So he's looking and he's sort of telling you subliminally, this is why I'm here. There's a slight, twist on events here.
Show us some more, yeah.
So this is Henry VI. So Henry VI in this top left corner is sort of any king to, I think I'm right in saying this, 2 reigns, in the sense that he was very, very reluctant to be king, and made a hell of a bad job of it to start with. Went mad, he's then sort of got pushed back into the job. And I've called it the timid king. And the reason I've done that is because, you know, when I looked at the painting, I thought, well, he doesn't really look like he's in charge of anything there. Sort of,
He looks quite startled.
well, he does look startled. Yeah, he looks a bit lost.
Are those his hands at the bottom?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, they are. Yeah, yeah.
So he's kind of like fidgeting with his
Yeah.
hands.
So I've kind of made this. I thought, well, let's visit him. You know, a few years later. So I thought, let's go into his maybe 50s or whatever, when he's kind of, you know, just taken up the baton again. Slightly more weather beaten sort of look about him. But I, you know, sort of thrown reluctantly into the job. But the timidity is perhaps still there. So it's keeping a little bit of the essence of it.
Talk us through the materials you use and how you paint and where.
Well, it's technically quite complicated because it didn't ought to be, but you know, when you start painting these pictures, you're desperately trying to keep them, give them some sort of current, you know, some feeling of the present, and then, you know, what does that mean as a painter at the moment making portraits? I think it's incredibly difficult to define it. We go to the National Portrait Gallery. I'm frequently disappointed. You know, I went there the other day and they've just relaunched it all, and I just think to myself, the role of portraiture surely should be pushing the bracket a bit more, not just this poor relation to kind of photography, which is always, in recent years, I think the past 100 years, has become. You know. It's very difficult then to define and work outside of that arena.
Are you doing like a modern impressionism?
I suppose I am in some ways, yeah, but I'm trying to kind of keep a sense of the gesture and the material of paint present in the paintings, but with a bit of an acknowledgement to the figurative, you know, reality, right? So it's keeping that dance going, you know, between the two.
Yeah. And in terms of your studio then and materials, do you work at home or do you?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I kind of lay everything out, all of the kind of research, I print as much as I can out, so I surround myself with the material.
Do you play medieval music?
I do put some. How about funny
Dress
enough, I
up,
put some trance. Yeah, well, I immerse myself as much as I can in it. So yes, I'm listening to kind of documentaries on at the time whilst I'm working. And I'm trying to enter the headspace of these people as best as I possibly can.
Yeah.
So anything like that, which, you know, as contemporary as I can get it,
Yeah.
I will look at. This is a slight image, you can't really see it, but it's based on, it's the inspiration. It's called, it's the White Queen. I'm afraid I'm going to have to rely on these books for the history of it. But my response was sort of a slightly play on current figures, which temporary figures within the royal family.
She looks like who married into the monarchy? Grace, the actress, the American actress. Grace Kelly, doesn't she have that?
Yeah, well, I suppose she does in a way. I mean, I was slightly interested in the Meghan Markle angle.
Right.
Myself.
Tell us more.
Well, because I don't know if I should admit to this, but I quite like the fact that there's this kind of slightly exiled princess who's kind of, you know, joined the family, and there's forever this obsession with her, and her kind of, you know, is she in favour, is she not? Again, these are wonderful narratives that keep on going, you know. So I sort of framed her in this guise of perhaps one of the most influential queens. Never quite became queen, but she was, I think she was the Elizabeth. She was the sister of Henry VII. I think I'm right in saying that. Very, very influential linchpin, you know. So kind of made all the background, you know, all the deals in the background.
Behind every good man.
Exactly. Yeah. So then, so
were you allowed to take these portraits home with you on the tube?
oh no, afraid not. Definitely not allowed.
Take us to another one then, Dan.
This is called the Mystique, the Overseas Suitor, and it was kind of when I was talking earlier about the idea of you know, these paintings as sort of dating agencies.
Yeah.
The said sitter was right in that far corner. I'm afraid I've forgotten her name. Princess. Can anyone enlighten me? What's her name on that plaque? That one, yeah. There we go. Mary of Austria. Had a bad marriage, divorce, sort of, but then was looking out for a kind of suitor. And I just imagined this sort of narrative of her sending a picture of herself overseas to our monarchs and kind of.
Nothing much has changed, is it?
No, quite. No, it doesn't. No, absolutely not. No, that's what's so current and fresh about it. I think, you know, it's just different.
And sad.
Sad as well.
Yeah, because you can't see our brains.
Parents of Barnet.
That's beautiful.
No, thank you.
And is this oil?
They're all oil, yeah, all sort of quite heavily worked, and some of them are
Any
raised.
poisonous lead paints?
All poisonous. I probably ingested a lot. This is called the Compassionate Queen, and this is so it's married Henry VIII, didn't get her head cut off. No. Yeah, yes, please, yeah, yeah.
A
Again,
very,
you know,
very learned audience here.
I know, I'm lucky, I'm
That's-
relying on you all, yeah. So then again, the story there was, which appealed to me, she was not liked by Mary the First, but was embraced. But she, despite all this, all the animosity towards her, having married Henry and bore a, gave a son, then sort of accepted the children of Henry. I just like that dignity, and I like the little anecdotes that survived into our time. So I'm visiting. There's one painting of her in the which is where the bar is located against the window. Lovely portrait. Above this one of Henry VIII, and it's just wistful. It's got that nice sense, nice expression. But I wanted this another again. I wanted a directness. I wanted her to be kind of offering herself as a kind of agony art, if you like.
I'm quite interested in how inspired you sound by monarchs across the ages and still of our own era, Dan.
Well, I don't see them as that distant figure. I really don't. It's like the guy who's commissioned this Athelstan painting over there. So, I mean, I think it's the same motivation. It's just that big curiosity for how these people have been the kind of conveyors of these wonderful stories over the years. And they've encapsulated the story and the strife and all the problems of the times. And
their stories keep changing. You were talking about Richard
yeah,
III.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll just go from it. So Mary I, as we know, had phantom pregnancies or pregnancies which didn't take place with Philip. And, she desperately kind of, I think, felt very, very sorry for him. Sort of felt this sense of her, she was called Bloody Mary for all the reasons sort of know of, trying to reinstate Catholicism into, after her father just banished it. And then she wanted to keep the monarchy going. This person who never would have been queen. And I envisaged her really here, expectant. It's called Expectant Mary, and it's kind of a much more, I was hopeful image. I like it's an image. I think that, so it's going down the other trouser leg of history.
She looks a little younger
yeah,
evidently.
sort of, is she in the job there or not? Or did she kind of swerve it? Well, we don't. Well, I've sort of gone into that territory of the unknown. We've been off on a tangent.
How many paintings have you made for Reign? 10. And they vary in sizes?
Yes, yeah, the Mary is about the same size as the Mary there, shown alongside. Similarly, Athelstan, and the others are sort of about the same size, these panels.
Yeah.
This one is, he was the son of Henry VII, who was married very young and was the hope of the Tudor dynasty, and tragically sort of died of some natural cause, but was married off, and it's him there, bearing the weight of this very delicate flower, the Tudor rose, but then this dreadful kind of occurrence that happened, and he never foresaw that, this envisaged role, this great hope. Yeah, so what we're referring to earlier, the Richard III, so, the famous story, the one which I'm keenest on, the most recent, is the re-evaluation of this king, and how, first of all, his body was discovered, and then they could corroborate all of this idea of his physicality and how he was depicted in certain paintings. There are a few of them. There's a couple here. And of course, the obvious famous story that Shakespeare, said of him. And then we have in more recent, after the finding the body, they discovered that the twins, or the Tower twins he was accused of murdering, weren't actually murdered, and were living at large, really, over in France, beginning their own stirrings of their own uprising.
I'm looking at Adam now. Is this true?
Oh yeah, well, it was very well, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I didn't believe when I first heard this documentary came about. I sort of looked it up, but I was wholly convinced.
Christopher Wren claimed he'd found the bodies of the princes in the tower when he did some restoration work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's
But they didn't have DNA testing or anything like
they haven't
that,
quite
did
done,
they?
they haven't done that yet. But what was, there was very telling sort of evidence of correspondence from people very close to the twins, and where they'd gone off to stay with their auntie. So then, very recent years, this whole reputation has been completely transformed, and I like right. So my interpretation was this: not only was a man guy on the eve of the Battle of Bosworth, called this, where his reputation is kind of reconsidered, and he is now not quite a bad guy as he's kind of reported to be by Shakespeare. And I like the fact that a new painting of someone can then enter into a change of narrative, all these years later.
I went to I did some drawings at the events for the reinterment of Richard III.
Yeah.
And managed to get entangled in the funeral cortege at one point with right behind the coffin, some police outriders. But they were stopping at various villages that were significant as part, like they stopped by the Battle of Bosworth. And so
How did you free yourself?
Well, there was one farm road, and the coffin that went off up this farm road, and the policeman stopped and said, "Sorry, mate, family only."
I just wanted to ask you, Jan, just to finish, as an artist, is it a pressure or is it an enjoyable pressure to be asked to respond to these existing beauties?
Enjoyable pleasure, but I mean, certainly a challenge. I mean, definitely moments of complete kind of frustration along the way. But that's normal. I mean, you're meant to. As an artist, it should never be, never free and easy. You've got to be kind of always put on the spot. Sometimes you arrive at some kind of, solution.
I think we're more problem makers than problem
solvers. That's true, actually.
As artists should be, I think. Listen, Dan, we've spent good quality time together in festivals where you were working on, what do you call those?
Etchings. Live etchings.
Have you worked with wood blocks?
I have, yeah, many times.
Yeah, because we're going to go and welcome Llywelyn Walton now. Here he is. First of all, though, sorry, Llywelyn, big, huge thanks to Dan Llywelyn Hall as well. We have got a fair contingency of Welsh people here, Dominic. For that, I thank you. In the middle of London here. Llywelyn, you're going to tell us about these beautiful blocks. How old is the oldest that we can see there? Nobody's allowed to touch them.
Yeah, very important. No handling. Yeah. Of these ones, they probably date to around the 1840s, kind of 1850s. We have a huge collection of these blocks, which we only really realised we had during lockdown. So it's about.
Where were they?
So there's a large cabinet, a bookshelf just out by the stairs to the library, and they've been there since. In a lot of cases, they've been there since we moved to Burlington House, which was 50 years ago.
Are there cleaners in Burlington House?
It was, yeah, and just found because the building was closed in the during the era, the head of library was curious about what was in the cases and found a key, and these cabinets were just completely chock-a-block with these blocks. And then
how many are there?
There's around 3,500 in total.
And we can, each one of us, sponsor a block. So could you describe, we've got a selection of how many, because we can't all see them. How many are there in front? If you could describe what you can see,
I've got some
Llywelyn.
clubs, so
This is like going to the zoo and adopting an animal. You can adopt a block. And here's what we have. Go for it, Llywelyn. Don't touch them.
Right, I've got clubs. So this is one of them. Here we go. So this is actually quite a good example because it's kind of royal connection, I suppose. But they depict a lot of different types of images, of scenes. Basically what was interesting to the antiquaries of the past, where they would go to certain places and they would draw, this is actually a tile from a church in Maidstone, and it was drawn by the person who went there and then displayed that drawing to the society in the ordinary meetings. And then that was then turned in, engraved by the professional wood engravers then, and then printed in publication. So in the journal Archaeologia, which was published going back to the early 18th century, they would be, these illustrations and these blocks were used to print in those publications. So it's really they've kind of become sort of integral, I would say, to kind of the collections in that we have in the society, and it's we can actually link them to a lot of other collections that we have. And
Adam, you look very excited looking that closely to that. Are you? Describe this, what the figure on there for us.
It's, well, the raised part of the block would be the part that prints. This looks like it's cut to print a color. It's not linear. There are lots of kind of flat areas of wood, which you would with your dog skin wood dabber.
Nice. It has to be dog.
It has to be dog skin,
not
because
cats.
dogs don't sweat like other animals.
Is this true now?
Yes.
Because we have to have true or false when Adam talks.
Your ink dabber would have to be made from dog skin.
Okay.
You have two of them,
And what ink would we
so
be
you'd
using? Blood?
You'd use a black ink, like
Okay.
like
Okay,
from soot mixed
So you
with,
can sponsor this one. Pick us another one now.
and then you dab it, and then you put it in your Caxton type printing press.
Do you have your dog skin dabbers at home?
We've
Handy?
moved on since
Right,
those
but if you
days.
dog, do you take them
We
for
have
walks?
gelatin rollers now, actually.
More bones.
I've got some dog skin dabbers if you want to borrow them.
I'd love to. My vegetarian family would love that. What we hear? Describe it.
these are a series of iron weapons from Siberia, I believe, and they were discovered and then again drawn by curious antiquaries of the past, and then again the drawing would be brought to the meeting and then engraved, and then eventually ended up in the journal. So yeah, real diverse range of things. It's a lot of archaeological objects, because it was kind of the start of archaeology as a kind of discipline, really. Going back to then. So a real range of archaeological objects, but other things that antiquaries has found interesting.
So we've had a prince, we've had Siberian swords. Are they swords?
Yeah, there's a celt at the bottom, which is a kind of axe head.
A what?
A celt. It's an axe head. And then, 3 kind of iron daggers or swords.
Okay.
Yeah.
And give us another example there, Yola. I mean, there's 3,000. Yeah.
Bit smaller, this one, but this is the leather riding glove of Richard II, which was found in his tomb in Westminster Abbey.
How do you know that?
Well, I've done too much research, really. Too many hours spent going through where all these come from. But I found them by going through the books in the library and the journals that we have, and then seeing the printed version, and then going back and cross-referencing, and
Amazing.
then.
So which ones are more precious than others, so that we could sponsor the most expensive?
I mean, they're all precious to me. So yeah, they're. I mean, obviously some of them date. I think the earliest one I've catalogued so far is about 1812. But then they range in date, and you can see the kind of development and the style of print, and how printing is developed as a discipline during the Victorian era, because they then go into kind of electrotype like casts and chemical processes to kind of create the blocks. So all these different types of materials as well that we're going into making them.
To become an expert in wood blocks, what do you study at university?
Well, whether I'm an expert, I've just been doing it too long now, so I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. I studied archaeology originally, and then I went on to do a master's in MA in conservation, and just ended up here about 18 months ago, because they found this collection and they needed someone to catalogue it. So
Incredible. Is it exciting?
Yeah, I've obviously, as you were saying, sort of accidentally became an expert in these woodblocks, and I'm one of the first people to actually handle them, to register them, to photograph them, to digitize them, since they were they were created.
Incredible.
So yeah, I mean, that's really rewarding.
And
Yeah.
how can people find out more about these 3,000 and how can they sponsor?
Yeah,
the
so
blocks?
I think we've actually got some forms outside. So you're welcome to put your details down, because when you adopt a block, your name will go next to the record when it's published online.
Not carved into the blocks.
No, definitely not. No, they're museum objects now, so very important that they're not. That doesn't happen.
Are these your favourites that you've picked out especially for us? Have you got
yeah.
the numero uno? What is it going to be? Or is that the prince?
I think out of these, the weapons, the iron weapons, just because
Why?
it's just the detail on the block, the level of detail. I mean, you're welcome to come up after and have a look.
Count them, because Adam's got his eyes on them.
Yeah, okay. I'll be stood over there just watching. Yeah, but the intricacy in the carving and the engraving is really, yeah, it blows my mind that they.
And it's Siberian.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah,
know?
who doesn't love that? So yeah, they just obviously, I think I'm about halfway, about 1600, 1700 in now, so still a while away to go, but
Well, I'm sure
getting
we
through
all
it.
wish you lot the very best in finishing the last, what was it, 1300?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah,
I think you
had a
can
few
have a
more.
pint in the Blind Beggars once you've
I
finished.
think I'll need it.
I think it's time now for us to open the floor to questions. I'm sure you're all desperate to ask. You're all very learned people. So is there any sort of aspect of these conversations? Lady in the orange there. Sorry?
We can't do that as the museum objects there. So yeah. Well, you can see how historically they were printed, because we have those, the journals and the books in the library, and a lot of those digitized as well. So.
Can the lady access them specifically if she comes in as a visitor? There you go.
You're able to use the library and the library resources then, so you can go through.
And then you can put them online and we can see them on Instagram. And any more questions? Slade.
These printed blocks are they all associated
They vary quite a bit. I would say 70-80% of them are were used to print it. Some of them are.
Some blocks were found quite famously in the mud in the Thames, weren't they?
They found a complete typeface,
Yes.
yeah, which the designer was not happy with, and it had been chopped over. I think it was Kew Bridge.
Yeah. Any more questions? Oh, Trevor. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, well, that was present King's coronation. So I had this spot in Trafalgar Square to paint it. So I set my stall up there and kind of worked through the whole build up and the kind of moment crescendo when it passed by. And it was just this tremendous dramatic sort of display, theatrical kind of display. And there's the ghostings, it's the comings and goings of people throughout the whole period. As I gradually became more and more kind of exhausted by the process.
They didn't push you away like they did Adams. They
Well,
family only.
certainly tried, but I absolutely I kind of built a sort of little pamphlet almost, sort of tied things to railings, and I was there from sort of 4 a.m, I think. Yeah.
Did you start to sketching it?
Well, it was a kind of an unknown quantity really, but I kind of felt I needed to observe this spectacle, and but it's more really about seeing how people engaged with it, and this fascination, and just a once in a lifetime sort of theatre.
What's it
Might
called?
be more than once in a lifetime.
What's it called?
It's called Pomp and Circumstance Adversus.
Is this up?
It's
For
going to be in the
auction?
gala auction. Yeah.
Who's the auctioneer? It's quite a famous
Yeah,
auctioneer.
this evening it's Matthew Haley.
And he's here tonight. Okay. And when is this auction?
The auction is on the 4th of July. I can't think what else is happening.
Oh dear.
The auction takes place at 7 o'clock, so there's plenty of time to get back to them on the TV.
And online as well, presumably.
On the following day, it's 6 p.m. So on the 5th, people can bid up to then on the 6th.
How much are these catalogues so that people can? Yeah, and where can people get them? Okay. Are there any more questions? That was brilliant, Trevor. Last time I saw Trevor, well, actually before, he was singing Reverend Eli Jenkins in Swifts, which is where the peace agreement was signed with the Irish leaders there, wasn't it? Yes. How are you, sir? Good, good, good. And any more questions? Then I should just say thank you so very much for coming along tonight, for your interest and continued interest in life and the history of this wonderful planet of ours. Huge thanks to Yola. Huge thanks to Adam, to Dan, and to Dominic. Do you want to have a few more words?
Thanks.
Oh,
Thank you so much for sharing.
Honestly, my pleasure.
We went to the local grocers for you. I hope you approve.
Thank you.
So we're going to keep the bar open for 1 hour. Very reasonably priced drinks next door. Do stay and have a look at the artwork. And just to remind you, do take a rain leaflet with you and do tell all your friends about it. So on the 28th of June, the exhibition opens. And on that night, Adam and Dan will be in this room with all their works, and they'll be in situ to talk about their work from 5 o'clock. And they'll also be joined by King Henry VIII, because on the 28th of June is his birthday, Henry VIII's birthday, and he'll be joined by some musicians who will sing music and motets from Henry's court. There'll also be the opportunity to make your own crown with edible jewelry. There'll be some interesting cocktails, and there'll be some collections from our Tudor collections up in the library. So do come to that. It's a rolling program, so for £5, you get all of that for 1 hour and a free drink. So do tell all your friends about it. The other thing to say is that on the 3rd of July, so the exhibition runs from 10 till 4 from the 1st to the 5th of July, but on the 3rd of July, British art historian and broadcaster Andrew Graham Dixon is going to talk about royal portraiture with Dan and Adam. And then on the final night, the finale is our gala auction. So do please support it if you can. It'll be at 7 o'clock and our auctioneer will be Matthew Haley. And the money that we raise will go towards digitizing our library collection of prints and drawings. And we also have some extremely rare first edition prints by George Virtue, who's our first engraver. And there'll be 9 of those which we'll be auctioning. The online auction is now on, and there's a catalogue outside for £12. And if you would like to be a member of the society and join our community, we'd love to welcome you. And there's a leaflet by the door. Thank you very much.
Sit or stand?